I want to really acknowledge a young lady that I spoke to literally maybe a couple of days ago. I'm not being specific because I'm trying to protect her identity. If you are out there watching me right now, I appreciate you once more. But you know what? I will leave the story till the end of this show. But this child was only 9 when she was abused. But I will tell you that story a little later on. Now, self report studies show that 20% of adult females and 5 to 10% of adult males recall a childhood sexual assault or sexual abuse incident. Okay. Now that we see how rampant this is, and we have our children out there, what children, who are the at risk children? Now, this is not etched in stone. Any child can be vulnerable, unfortunately, but more so these children. One, children who do not live with both parents, they are more at risk. And I think I don't even need to define that. It could be that the one parent they're living with is constantly out of the house trying to make ends meet, this and that. Chances are that that kind of child will be put with a caretaker every now and then, or ask a neighbor asked to look after. Or this is not to say your neighbors are the perpetrators right now. I'm just saying that these children are exposed when they do not live with both parents in one way or another. Children living in homes marked with parental discord, when there's a lot of abuse going on, even with the parents, parents in divorce homes. We all know divorce impacts and affects children the most. And of course, where there's domestic violence, it could be within or without. But obviously, in a home where there's domestic violence, I bet the kids are not the primary things on their minds most of the time, unfortunately. Now, children living with other people outside their nuclear family, you put your child with a friend's family because you want your child to be in a certain school or in a certain country or in a certain city, it's a dangerous act. Now, there are noble people out there, but it's a dangerous act when you leave your child in care of other people. I don't care how handsome and beautiful they look, how rich they are, there are sick people out there. Okay, so children living with people other than their parents are also at risk children. Now, what do perpetrators look like? What do they look like? Yeah, well, one of our parents just said 7 to 13 years of age and a bunch of question marks. Unfortunately, it is what it is. That is the life we're living. That is the world we're living in. And yeah, and the parents said, "May God continue to watch over our children. This is scary." Yes, it is scary. Now, what do perpetrators of child sexual abuse look like? No, they're not weird. They're not aliens. They don't have scales on their bodies. Their nails don't look colored outside nail polish. They don't have short hair, long hair, bald head in any peculiar way. Their heads are not bashing. They don't have one eye. They are people around us. Majority of these perpetrators are someone the child or the family knows already. As many as 93% of victims under the age of 18 know their abuser. They are not strangers. They are not people that walk out of the alley at night and attack your child. They are people that we already know. Example, they can have any form of relationship with these children, including an older sibling, a playmate, a family member, whether they're living with you or not, a teacher, a coach or an instructor, a caretaker, a housemaid or houseboy. Like I said, CSA is not peculiar to girls only. A neighbor, a parent, incest. That gets me. Incest. A parent can be a CSA perpetrator, a significant other of the parent, especially where you have a parent who is in custody of the child having now in a relationship with another person. I don't want to say with another man because it could be with another woman, but but a parent, significant other, and the parent of another child. Watch out, you know. What do kids do now when they go to their friend's house? Night out. What do they call it? Yes, those are setups for this kind of situation. So, what are the signs of abuse? Because it's one thing to know that to know that it exists, but what are the signs of abuse? How can you tell if a child is being abused? Bleeding, that goes without saying, bruises, or swelling in the genital area. I will stop right there because I think a parent might be saying, how am I supposed to see bruising or swelling um, in my child's genital area? Well, you're probably talking because your child now self cares. I just said to you that 7-year-olds, in a lot of homes, 7-year-olds are still being taken care of. They're still being showered for. And do you know, there's a case that I heard about that the abuse started on this poor girl when she was as young as 2. This, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to lose it, but who abuses a 2-year-old child? But this is the story of a girl. If you had been on my website, I actually featured that story on a Tuesday's Tale. I couldn't hold back. I featured the story on Tuesday's Tale if you want to go look on my website, but that's for next time. But then, so this is where bleeding, bruising, swelling of the genital area, this is where you as a parent can see it. God forbid, with their kids that young that are being abused. Now, bloody, torn or stained underclothes, even for the ones that are older. Remember, this is a shock and abuse. This is an unexpected thing. They don't necessarily know how to do anything. They're not trying to necessarily hide. So you might find their clothes thrown in your wash and with some weird looking blood on it. This is a sign. This is where you stop and you begin to dig. You begin to investigate. Difficulty walking, sitting, in the child. If you notice that, stop, investigate. Frequent urinary or yeast infections, pain, itching, or burning in the genital area. Those will be physical signs. There are behavioral signs. This is what a lot of parents see more often than not. They miss the physical signs, especially if it's a teenager we're talking about. It's possible to completely miss the physical signs. But what about the behavioral signs? The changes in hygiene. Sometimes the child now all of a sudden refuses to bathe, or they're doing it excessively, trying to wash off the dirty hands of these God-forsaken perpetrators. Excuse my French, parents. They might develop phobias. They might start to exhibit signs of depression or post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They might express suicidal thoughts and, just flippantly say things like that. I don't care. What if I die? People walking on the street can get hit. Don't take those kind of sentences lightly. Sometimes it's a cry out. The child is trying to cry out for help, and that's the best way they know how to do it. So when you hear stuff like that, stop and begin to talk to your child. As adolescents are the ones that especially do that, suicidal thoughts. As they have trouble in school, all of a sudden they're going to drop in, they're absent in class, they're skipping classes, things like that, inappropriate sexual knowledge or behaviors. They start to have nightmares. A child, a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, even 13, 14-year-old that begins to bed wet, please, parent, don't let this pass you by. That's a cry out for help. It might not be CSA, but that's a definite cry out for help in a child. Not what? At 13? You're bedwetting, the whole world is not going to hear about this. I'm going to shame you into stopping. Really? Really? Okay, as we continue, Overly protective or concerned child for other siblings might mean something. That might mean the child is experiencing something and is trying to protect her siblings or his siblings from experiencing the same things. They might suddenly assume a caretaker role. They may run away from home. They may develop aggressive behaviors, like suddenly they start to suck their thumbs at 15 or even at 10, something they weren't doing before. They might start to cause self harm, cutting themselves up, cooking, doing things to themselves that they would ordinarily not do. And they tend to shrink away or seem threatened or startled by physical contact. These are some of behavioral changes that you might see in the child. Now,